Trust in education, strategy, trade skills, and intuition. Imagine your trade successfully materializing, obeying your trading strategy, avoiding decisions based on greed or fear, and never looking back or stopping once your trade has commenced. All right. So if everybody can hear me okay, drop me one in the chat and we will get things underway. All right, cool deal. All right, so let's get caught up. Let's get caught up. Let's get caught up. Um, so over to trading economics. Over to trading economics. All right, so China Q2 GDP. It slowed less than expected, but still slowing. Uh, China's economy expanded 5.2% year on year in Q2, easing from a 5.4% in the prior two quarters, and marking the softest pace since Q3 of 2024. Still, the latest reading narrowly beat estimates of 5.1, supported in part by Beijing's policies, their policy measures amid fragile trade truce between them and the United States. All right. Growth momentum in the second half is projected to weaken further due to headwinds from trade tensions, deflation risks, and prolonged property slump. Right. So they expect things to continue to slow down in China. Um, so we'll continue to monitor that and see where things go and how things continue to progress there. Okay. Um, but it's important to watch because it has an impact on oil. Okay. Has an impact on oil. So definitely something to keep our eyes on. Um, Give me one second. Um, Next we have U.S. inflation. It's just an estimate, right? Annual inflation rate in U.S. likely accelerated for the second consecutive month, 2.7%. Um, in June 2025, the highest level since February, up from 2.4 in May. On a monthly basis, CPI is expected to rise by zero point 0.3, marking the latest increase in 5 months, and up from zero point 0.1 in May. The uptick is likely driven by businesses starting to pass on higher import costs resulting from newly imposed tariffs, particularly affecting categories such as furniture, toys, recreational goods, and automobiles. All right. Um, Market participants, just a side note here, market participants, they don't expect the full brunt in the automotive side to really hit the market until Q3, right? Just based on their shipping schedules, um, and the vehicles that they already had on the ground. So some of those are starting to trickle in some areas, but they're not expecting to see that full brunt until Q3. Um, and all of that combined with the rebound in gasoline prices, right? With oil starting to tick up, even though it pulled back the past couple sessions. Core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, is projected to edge up 3% in June, uh, following three consecutive months at 2.8%, which was the lowest rate since 2021, right? Monthly core CPI is anticipated to decline 0.3%, up from zero point 0.1 in May, marking the sharpest increase in 5 months, right? So the expectation is that the market slowly start to see inflation move back to the upside, okay? So that is the expectation coming out of the United States. Japan. Japan's 10-year government bond yield rose 1.59% on Tuesday, hitting its highest level since 2008, amid growing expectations of fiscal spending ahead of the upper house election on July 20th. Markets are increasingly pricing in the possibility of fresh stimulus measures, including a potential consumption tax cut, um, as policymakers seek to shore up economic momentum. The rise in yields came despite the Ministry of Finance reducing issuance of super long bonds, suggesting strong upward pressure on short-term rates. Right, investors are now waiting upcoming trade and inflation data that may shed light on the impact of U.S. tariff threats on Japan's economy. Right, that's the big thing that everybody's really waiting on across the world. Um, Meanwhile, global markets are focused on the U.S. Consumer Price Report, which could influence the Federal Reserve's next policy move. Okay, so focus is on the U.S., but you got some things happening in Japan, and because of this, right, the expectation of additional stimulus, right, we're seeing the yen continue to weaken. Okay, um, Brent crude oil futures dropped around 68.7 per barrel on Tuesday, extending losses from the previous session after U.S. President Donald Trump gave Russia a 50-day deadline to agree to ceasefire, easing concerns that new sanctions could disrupt crude supplies. Trump warned Russia on Monday to end its war in Ukraine within that time frame or face tariffs up to 50%. At the same time, Trump announced a plan to send new weapons to Ukraine, including the Patriot air defense missiles Kyiv has been urgently seeking. Prices were pressured by concerns that U.S. tariffs could slow economic growth and reduce energy demand. Trump announced a 30% tariff on products from the EU and Mexico, effective August the 1st, adding to a similar warning issued against other trade partners. Data from China, the world's largest importer, showed the economy grew at a slower pace in Q2, but ahead of expectations, partly due to the fragile trade truce with the U.S. All right, so you got a back and forth happening that is pushing the market down a little bit on the oil side. Um, So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it feels like things are being pushed up just to try to keep the price lower so that one of his things that he ran on can still be intact. So we shall see there. Okay. Um that's where we are with the overview. Over to the calendar. Here on Tuesday. So we had it yesterday. Just those GDP numbers yesterday. Um, Today, 8:30 CPI out of Canada. Um, Import numbers and then CPI out of the United States, right? This is where everybody's eyes are, right? Markets kind of mute. looking to see what will happen with that CPI data. Later on today, you have multiple FOMC members speaking. You got Governor Bailey speaking. Um, and then tomorrow, you got CPI for the pound. You got core PPI for the United States, right? Another inflation measure. Keep our eyes on. More FOMC members speaking, crude oil inventories, employment change and unemployment rate out of Australia. Then on Thursday, retail sales, right? See how people are spending their money. You got average hourly earnings and unemployment rate for the pound also on Thursday. And then on Friday, you get consumer sentiment and inflation expectations out of the University of Michigan. All right. So middle of the week will be important today, tomorrow, and Thursday to see where the inflation data lands and where things go from there. All right. So that's where we are overall, fundamentally. Any questions? Nope. All right, cool deal. Let's hop over to the charts. We'll start with the dollar. Um, Actually, I'm gonna come back here. S&P 500. U.S. stock futures rose on Tuesday after reports that Nvidia is preparing to resume some chip sales in China, easing concerns over trade restrictions. The move come just days after Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang visited Beijing, met with Donald Trump. The company is reportedly seeking U.S. government approval to export its H2 graphics processing unit to China and expects licenses to be granted soon. Right, despite the positive momentum, investor caution lingered ahead of key events. Right, major banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, are set to report quarterly results, which could provide valuable insight into the state of financial sector. The markets are also closely watching the consumer price index, um, expected to offer clues on the inflationary impact of Trump's tariff policies. All right, the report is seen as a key factor in shaping expectations for the Federal Reserve's next move. All right, so S&P 500 up right now, okay, on the future side. Um, yeah, so that's where we are from a stock market perspective. So, over to the charts, DXY. We finally broke that weekly level last week, right? And we're looking for a retracement of some sort at some point, right? We got some consolidation happening, some back and forth. You got stochastic stalling there in the buy zone. All right. Still looking for a retracement to potentially come, but be it short-lived and then a move back down to the D extensions here. Okay. So down to the 4. That's where we are overall, right? Headed to the downside, 618 retracement, looking to get to that matching D extension. And we'll take the back and forth, potentially that retracement there, and then a continuation down. Okay, so DXY is meet right now. We got to break the cloud here. We pulled back in, bullish cloud ahead, right? So that gives us that move to the upside. Still sitting in that 118, 127 zone, but things are starting to align for that move back to the upside, at least in the short term on the dollar. Okay, so we'll keep our eyes on that. And with that, I want to go take a look at the Aussie dollar. All right, because we're still sitting high in the zone on the daily. Okay, sitting in that 118, 127 zone, trying to figure things out. Stochastic pushing back to the upside. So again, if we get data to suggest dollar strength because of no rate cuts coming from the Fed, right? Um, we could see a move down here coming back to the support level at 63,698. All right. And then we'll see what happens. I don't know that we break that level, but we're watching that there. Okay. So we come down here to the four. Maybe not. Let's go back. There we go. There's our fib on the four. Still just extending along here. All right. So still haven't gotten to that D extension yet. Just lingering. So we'll continue to monitor this, right? Stochastic on the 4 hour back into the buy zone. So as we continue to bounce back and forth, we'll continue to monitor to see if we get to that D extension first before we get the breakdown, or if we're able to get a breakdown in this move, at least again back down to that 6,300 level. Okay. And then we'll watch from there. So data today will be key, and then market reaction, right? And what market participants have to say about it will then be key following afterwards. Okay. So watching this Aussie dollar play here. Um, let's see if we can get a move back down to a support level. Okay. So that's the Aussie dollar. That's what I'm waiting to see, and that's how that aligns with that DXY. Um, any questions here?
Nope.
All right, cool deal. um, Euro dollar. Right, similar story, but we don't have an 80-20 here. We're at a 50% retracement, and we're making our way to the D extension here at 119. But we got this pullback happening here, right? We broke that previous resistance level, and we're pulling back. All right, we got a stochastic in the buy zone here, but can we get another push to the downside and then rise? Okay. We got previous resistance. We're trying to test as future support, right? Can we push down deeper into that zone a little bit with a retracement on the dollar? Okay, that's kind of what I'm looking at. So as we dive down to the four, right? 4 hour also, we're continuing to move to the upside, but again, right? Can we push deeper into the zone here on the retracement to give us that move to the upside? Okay. And then down on the one, this is where we are. Okay. Pressing down, can we push a little bit deeper into the zone here, getting us to a 50%, 618% retracement level, um, to give us a nice entry opportunity to make this move to those higher level D extensions. Okay. So that's what I'm waiting for here, right? With that data. Um, see if we can get another drive to the downside here. Right. And setting us up nicely to reverse out and move back long. Okay, so I'm being patient on these dollar pairs, but looking at potential reversals to give us that opportunity. Okay, so that's the euro dollar. Any questions on this one? Okay, and then yeah, so if you run a sub fib off the high, right, you have some confluence with the extension here and that last fib to the downside. So that could add some additional confluence of a move of one more leg to the downside before we get that reversal. Okay. So that's the euro dollar. And then over to the pound dollar. Pound in a little different situation, but still favor them the over the dollar, right? Um, Sitting at some low prices right now, stochastic in the buy zone, right? Looking for a move to the upside. But this could be another scenario where we get one more push to the downside getting a 133. Okay. Potentially setting us up for a head and shoulders pattern on this pound. But potentially one more push to the downside here, getting us to these lower levels, and then a reversal out after that. Right. Um, so as we come down to the 4, all right, this is where we are on the 4. Okay. Um, bring that down there. Boom. Right. And so one more leg down, getting us to that 133 level, puts us in a 618 retracement on the 4 hour time frame, right? So again, just looking for price to move down into our zones, setting us up nicely for opportunities to get long on these and continue to play that dollar weakness over the long term. Okay. So that's the 4 coming down to the 1. Similar story to that 4 hour, right? Just worked that 118 level and that move down, right? So we're sitting at an 8-6 retracement here, looking for price to move long, right? But can we come back down? And then on the 1 hour, be testing that AV boundary. Okay. Be testing that AV boundary on the 1 hour. So watching that for an opportunity to the downside, which would give us an 80-20 on this sub fib if we get that one more push to the downside. Okay, so that's our confluence there of a move long if we're able to push down into that zone. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at on these dollar pairs. Um, Patiently waiting for opportunities here to, like I said, to get back long on these. Okay, questions on the pound dollar? Nope. Cool deal. Um, Pound Aussie. Okay, overall, long term, right? We're looking for this to continue to move to the upside to get to that D extension, right? Still not high on the Aussie overall. On the daily, we're drawing this manual fib here, but we got a 50% retracement. We're sitting at this daily support level at 204. Stochastic pressing down into the buy zone here, right? So if we get higher CPI numbers, higher PPI numbers, lower retail sales numbers, right? We could see the market start to, right, give credence to that dollar gaining, retracing a bit. Okay. And that could cause, right, weakness in your commodity currencies. Okay. That weakness in your commodity currencies turns this into a double bottom and we see a push to the upside. Okay. So watching this level here at 204 on this pound Aussie, we come down to the 4 and just had a lot of back and forth bouncing there. So this is our most recent fib on the 4, sitting at that level, B boundary, right? Stochastic still higher in the zone. We'll see if consolidation occurs here, right, to push this back down. But seeing if we can hold this level and push to the upside, um, would even be okay if we push down into that 118, 127 zone, right? Giving us alignment for an 80-20 on the reversal. Okay. So watching that as a potential as well, but ultimately looking for reversal to come before pressing too deep, right? And looking for reversal back to the upside, even if it is in the short term on this pair, right? So that's on the 4. Come down to your 1, and we got an 80-20 here. Okay. I know you might say, Ryan, this got to the 382, but this B boundary did not form until this second candle closed. Okay. B boundary didn't form until this second candle closed. Um, and actually, that's our swing high. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's our B boundary closed there. which still gives us that opportunity. This is a weird one on the 80-20 because we got that immediate push for that B boundary, but still in this 118, 127 zone, and it's still considered an 80-20. Okay. So watching this one four move back to the upside. So we got some alignment here. Um, with kind of if we get kind of a more hawkish sentiment out of the Fed because of higher data points, right? Could lead for weakness in commodity currencies and reversal to occur here. Okay. So watching this 80-20 here for a move back long. Okay. From a currency perspective, this one is a hot one on my list for this week. Okay. And let's take a look at the pound. A British pound changed hands at 134, hovering its lowest levels in 3 weeks after Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey signaled the central bank is preparing to make deeper interest rate cuts if the labor market weakens further. Bailey said the UK's economy is underperforming its potential, creating slack that could help ease inflation, and reiterated that the rate path is downward, right? So rate cuts expected, okay? Um, but uh, while leaving the door open to faster easing if conditions worsen. All right, the jobs report will be published this week alongside key inflation data. Meanwhile, global trade tensions escalated after Donald Trump announced a 30% tariff on EU and Mexican goods set for August the 1st. The UK, shielded by a trade deal with the US, may benefit from diverting EU exports and increase investments as firms seek tariff-free access, right? So how a lot of countries get around the whole tariff situation is moving their goods to another country that doesn't have as high tariffs. And generally how that works is it's all based off the country that it's shipped out of, opposed to the country that it originates, right? Which is how Russian oil has continued to stay in the market, right? It just flows through Italy and France, and it still gets into the market. And so sanctions and all those things don't hurt Russia as much because that flow still occurs, right? So that's what this last portion means here. But that's where we are on the pound. So potential for rate cuts, but right, this 80-20, does it put us in a high price, right? Does it get us to a high price to then get back short on this one in the meantime? Okay, if those rate cuts come sooner rather than later. Okay, so there's your 80-20 on the pound Aussie. Any questions on this one? Oh, all right, cool deal.
I take that back. What did you say about the commodities weakening?
Yeah, if we get higher CPI and higher PPI data, right,
Okay.
higher inflation data, I would lean toward the Fed continuing to be more hawkish than dovish, right? Pushing no rate cuts coming soon, right? If and those rates would be higher if we start to see um impact of tariffs start to trickle into the market in some categories, right? Um, and so if we see that, we see dollar strengthen, right? Some uncertainty potentially come into the market, be a little bit more risk off, and then that could cause those commodity currencies to weaken a little bit. All right. So that's where we are, right? So we'll look for the 80-20 to play out there. You're welcome. You're welcome. Um, the yens are flying, right? Because of potential additional stimulus being offered ahead of some elections. So, right, this Aussie yen took out that high and is off to the races. We do got stochastic in the sell zone here, so we could get a pullback to retest. But this head and shoulders pattern, which we'll take a look at on the 4-hour time frame, was a beautiful one. I don't know who called it out here, but right, and we're at it to the upside, right? So beautiful play there, beautiful right shoulder, and we're headed long. So look for a pullback to retest that neckline and then to get a continuation to the upside on this Aussie yen. Okay. Um, and again, right, those commodity currencies getting a pullback could come with that data, which would be perfect alignment for a retest of that neckline. Boom. Right. So as we come down to the 4, I want to, yeah, so there's my fib running off the lows here. Okay, there's that head and shoulders pattern there. All right, I got my fib running off the low. We got a, we're just shy of a 50% retracement. So we got a 382 retracement, right? Headed to the D extension here at 99,020. Okay, but you see it, boom. Beautiful move to the upside, breaking that neckline. So we'll look for that pullback and retest there. Okay. Um, so as we come down to the 1, we'll take a look at this last leg. Right. Even though this plays into it, right? Coming off the lows, we still have that beautiful move, just shy of 50% retracement. But I want to look at the sub fibs on this one to track that potential retracement. Give me 1 second, everybody. All right. So just want to run these fibs off this low here. Eh, Potentially could set up for an 80-20 if we push into that zone. For a reversal right back there. Retest that neckline. Right? A retest of that neckline falls right in line with the deep retracement on that sub fib. Okay. So that's what I'm looking at on this Aussie yen is that move there. And then a low price to get back long. Right. We could see yen weakness for a little bit more time, right? I was looking at, potentially that the Bank of Japan turning things around, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it, right? Especially with all the uncertainty with the trade tensions and them trying to figure out what that impact could look like, and still not able to get a deal solidified. Um, so I don't know that we see a movement out of the Bank of Japan anytime soon. Um, they do like where things are at. Well, overall where things are headed outside of the tariff situation. Um, but they have concerns. So I think we'll see this continue to fly. Okay. So that is the Aussie yen. Looking for a retracement to come there to retest that neckline and continue its move to the upside. We'll watch it again at around 102. Okay. So that's the Aussie yen. Um, CAD yen, right? You see it just taking off to the upside. All right. All these yens are doing the same thing. And we talked about it coming into the year, and I know I've mentioned potential for changes, but the Bank of Japan hasn't followed through on any of those things that they've mentioned because they're being extremely cautious. That's the one piece that they have followed through on is being extremely cautious, right? So I won't dive into this one, but ultimately it's moving to the upside, and we're headed to the D extension 108 on the 1 hour, 108 on the 4 hour, right? And then just a deeper retracement off the daily. Okay. But headed long, man. Headed long. So just wanted to peek in on that one and then want to peek in on the Swiss yen, which is going crazy right now. Going crazy right now. So we broke this monthly extension, right? 182, we broke that level and we're just flying. Just flying to the upside with that potential additional stimulus coming in. On the yen, right? So this 193 number, which I thought would be out of bounds, is actually in line, right? I didn't think that we would get that high on this Swiss yen, but we are. Okay, so here's another one where I'd just be looking for a pullback and a continuation to the upside, right? And looking at 193 as the target, right? And it's on the weekly time frame. Okay. So as we come down to the daily, that D extension blown through, right? 786, match an extension, boom. So we're looking for pullbacks and continuations on the Swiss yen, right? Getting us to that 193 level. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for. We'll wait for a swing out of form on the daily, give us that retracement. Here on the 4, we have an 80-20, right? But that might get to that D extension first. We'll see. But we'll watch. We'll watch this and see if we get that swing how to form here and a form on the daily before we get to that D extension, right? That could set us up for that move back down, giving us a nice retracement for a low price. Okay, so we'll watch that development as we go through the week this week to see if we get that to turn over, right? And if we get a nice trend line break, that could be a beautiful setup for couple hundred pip move, right? At least back to the B boundary level, right? 500 pips back to that B boundary range be a nice move, and that could be a low price, right? For that move back to the upside. Okay. Down on the 1, right? There's your 80-20. Excuse me. Similar to that 4. Okay. Similar to that 4 hour. So we'll watch and see how this evolves and if we get that nice move to the downside, setting us up to continue moving long. So watch this switch yen also for an 80-20 opportunity on the 4 hour and on the 1. Okay. Questions here? Nope. All right. Cool beans. Um, on the stock side of things, right? TSM Semiconductor sitting in this 80-20 zone. Okay. We'll watch and see, right? We just read about potential for NVIDIA and that H12 chip. So we may not get a retracement here after breaking this level, right? Broke that level. We may not get a retracement here. Okay. We may not get a retracement here, but we'll watch and see. Okay. See how the market comes in, see how some of the quarterly earnings come in, right? All that could play a role in that retracement either coming through or not coming through. So, um, but we'll continue to watch this one from a higher time frame perspective and just monitor to see if we get that move or not. Okay. On the four, boom, there's your 80-20 here as well. We're already trying to come out of that zone on the four. So the stochastic just being low in the zone though, right? So see if we get this to turn over with some of those quarterly earnings and get a nice low price to give us a great entry opportunity on this one and continue to ride this to the upside to those higher levels that we discussed during our presentation. Okay. But this is a good one to own, man. Good one to own over the long term. So we'll continue to monitor that there on the four, coming down to the one. Whoops, that's not the 1 hour. There's a 1 hour, right? And there's an 80-20 there as well. Okay, so looking for those low prices on this, and we'll see if we get a catalyst. We may not get back to that 189, but can we get a decent low price, 50% retracement, at least on this 1 hour, right? Giving us a nice opportunity um, for a lower priced entry to the upside. But I would love for price to come down this low, but I don't know that we'll have the fundamentals aligned there. We'll see though. Okay, but looking for a retracement to come here. So we'll watch and see. All right, so that's TSM, semiconductors. Um, I got to do a breakdown of Archer, which we've talked about and we've touched on, but I haven't dug into it. So that's one that we may do this week. Um, we have a few that are sitting in some 80-20 zones, and I'm curious to see how they move, right? AMD been moving pretty well to the upside overall, but we got 80-20s on the lower time frames here. Um, we've been moving long, right? Had a nice crown reversal here off the 80-20, moving to the upside. All right, and I expect it to continue to move long. But can we get a retracement first, right? Give us a deeper move on the sub fib and retest some of these previous highs. We'll see. But right now we're moving to the upside. So we'll continue to monitor this one and see how it evolves to see if we can get us a nice retracement here on the four, right? You see a capital fib running to the upside. I'm sorry, capital fib here. That was our 80-20 reversal. Okay. Now we're looking for pullbacks and continuations long. Okay. I think $77 was the lowest we'll see for a while. So looking for pullbacks and continuations. So if we can come back down into the sweet spot, that'll give us a nice entry, right? On top of averaging into this as it continues to accelerate with the things that are being done with AMD. Okay. Down to the one, right? And there's that 80-20 that we might get to that D extension first, right? So don't be surprised there if we get to that D extension before a retracement comes. Okay. So just a quick look at AMD, where price is sitting there. Um, this is another one that I have to cover. Um, um, one second. Um, this is another one that I have to cover. This is Micron Technology, right? Micron Technology. Um, One second, sorry. My bad, everybody. One second, please. One second, everybody. Having some technical difficulties here. My system froze up on me. One second. All right. I think I got it back moving here. Okay. So um Micron technology. Um they Micron technologies in the uh AI-led memory storage space. All right. We'll do a breakdown of them. But they're a semiconductor as well. Semiconductor company specializing in memory and storage solutions. Okay, so another piece of that infrastructure um, in the development of um, semiconductor chips, right? So we'll dig into this is another that we'll dig into, but on the 1 hour time frame, right? This 80/20 is slowly playing out, right? We're getting price to move down. Um, we come to the daily time frame. We had a fresh AB boundary. I'm looking for a reversal to come, right? So we can come back and retest some of these previous highs here, give us a nice low price, right? To get back long would be beautiful. Okay. So this is one that we'll dig into from a fundamental perspective, but we're in this up retracement zone. Okay. And I'm looking for a price to come back down in our zone. Okay. Looking for price to come back down here and give us a low price for an entry and a continuation to the upside, right? To 157-ish. That's the previous high. Looking for price to get back there. Okay, so that's on the daily, on the four, right? Like I said, we'll dive deeper on this, but 80/20 here, 118, boom, looking for that retracement to come. Okay, looking for the retracement to come there. Then on your 1 hour, there's your 80/20, right? If we get that deeper move on the daily and on the four, right, that'll take out the A on the one. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for here on MU, which is Micron Technology. Another stock we'll dive into. Um, mm, we'll likely do this one tomorrow. Likely do this one tomorrow. So, um, that's it. That's it. That's Micron Technology. Then let's take a look at the S&P 500 chart. We got futures moving to the upside early. Okay. Um, but price is running long. All right. We're pushing through this 118, 127 zone, headed to the upside, looking to track that 6,500 level that we've been watching, right? Thinking that momentum would just be too strong for a retracement to come here before we get to that 6,500 level. So Stochastic is in that buy zone, right? We got momentum moving to the upside. all of the fundamental things coming out of the Trump presidency, moving price to the upside currently, right? It maybe even get to the 6,800 level before it's all said and done. Okay, but 65 is in our sights, coming down to the four, right? Net retracement didn't even happen. Boom, we're running, right? So headed to the upside here on the S&P 500, and futures also are opening higher right now. So we'll continue to monitor that as the market opens later this morning. But headed along to the D extension 64 on the 1 hour and the 4 hour, and 6,500 on the daily is where we're headed on the S&P 500. Um, any questions on anything that we covered this morning? Nope. All right. Cool deal. Well, we will be back at it tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the pre-New York session. You all have a phenomenal, phenomenal Tuesday. Peace.